However, first things to go over, ladies and gentlemen, there's been more footage obviously released, and this is not the full 7-minute video which has been released. This is a shortened version of that video. However, you can go find the full 7-minute clip online, which shows the whole grisly incident. This is from Nick Soto on X, who's also taken the footage that was released by Alex Jones, and they've time synced different camera perspectives, so you can get a lot greater perspective as to what's going on. So obviously we know that recently, obviously a couple of days ago, the young Ukrainian refugee in North Charlotte, Iryna Zarutska, was, callously stabbed multiple times to death in a racially motivated killing. Killer himself saying, I got that white girl. You can share that on the video which I put in before in the last episode. And again, some people really, really disgusting are trying to say that one post I saw, which I had to respond to earlier, was saying, look, we don't see any cuts on the neck. How do we know that this is actually what happened, despite the fact that you see her collapse seconds after this happened in a pool of blood and stuff like that? One of the artists, which I want to bring this up on screen, ladies and gentlemen, which is why this should really be getting a lot more traction than it is, because of the absolute depravity of it, is that George Alexopoulos, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right there, he's a American cartoonist. He released this image. I'm going to put this up on screen, ladies and gentlemen, for you to get an idea of how, again, truly barbaric this was. If you haven't been keeping up with the news or whatever, just look at this illustration, which will be coming up on screen in a moment. And this is this young girl's final moments. Imagine if this was your daughter, that this was her final moments. For those of you who are listening, not watching, ladies and gentlemen, the illustration shows, it's a 4-part illustration, 4 boxes in like 4 quadrants. Top left, the first one, it's a young girl from the perspective, a first-person perspective of her looking down at her phone. Obviously, this is in a cartoon, style. Next one, you see her looking up at the roof of the train car, but this horrific, demonic looking person looking down at her. The black assailant in question, dreadlocks, hood up, the lot, with her hand sort of like, you can just see it in the bottom of the image, as if it's like, you can see it's like her hand is over her face, which is obviously what happened. Then looking down in the next image, you can see her phone in her hand and just pools of blood coming. And then the next thing you know, when she's passing away, there's what appears to be tears in the hand that's in front of her face. I had to share this, and it's one of those cases where a few pictures speak 1,000 words, and you wonder why people are so emotional right now. It's not just because of the incident itself and how much it tried to be covered up and everything like that. A large part of it has been because of the response. We got so much to go with regards to the response, ladies and gentlemen. Viewer discretion advised for this next bit, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't seen this footage, I think it'll be very enlightening for you to watch it. This is the time-synced footage showing the attack and the immediate aftermath. Literally in seconds after this attack, you can see her collapse into the footwell where she's sitting, and there's just an absolute tsunami of blood that comes out from under the barrier where she is, that goes towards the door. So viewer discretion advised, ladies and gentlemen. But again, it's important not to look away now, because this could very easily, very sadly, I should add, very sadly, be any one of us.
No. Yeah, that leg, oh, shit. You don't get bro.
Evil.
Aggravated, bro.
Truly evil.
Yeah.
There are no words.
Man, we gonna blood real bad, bro.
So again, and the really sad thing is, ladies and gentlemen, is that the really damning footage came from the other people that were on the train, who, shall we say, shared racial characteristics with this person, and rather than helping her in any way, they proceeded to get up as if nothing happened and walk to the other end of the train car. I'll see if I can find part of that footage for you now, ladies and gentlemen, so you can really understand. You know, there are absolutely no words for this whatsoever. Absolutely no words to describe how evil and sadly how preventable this was. Again, when you understand that this person was a multiple time felon, and that sadly, the focus on restorative justice and the focus on the community has been to try and in some ways justify this under the guise of oppression and whatever else. You know, we'll go over some very, very telling responses, and also telling with regards to the societal attitudes that enabled this kind of stuff as well in the subsequent things. But I want to highlight some people that actually did help, because there were some people that actually did try to go and help in the aftermath. So just after that video cut off, ladies and gentlemen, the image you'll see coming on screen in a moment, this is the aftermath of that incident. You could see how much blood is there gushing out of the wounds of this lady's body. And then you had some people saying that, you know, you can't see the wounds, where are the wounds, all of this stuff, etc. Despite the fact that obviously you can see she's wearing a black shirt, and many of the places where you can see the knife hit, right, you can see that it was in her shirt. So it would have penetrated her shirt, penetrated the skin, but it would have hidden the wounds from the camera. And obviously the blood would not be visible in the way that if you were wearing a white shirt, for example. But there were some people that did go to help. Sadly, this person was in the minority. This person was in the minority as people were instead filming it on their phones. They were moving up to the other end of the carriage to not have to deal with this situation. Where has, you know, the social contract is gone. The social contract is gone at this point. You know? What are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do? This is truly, again, just absolutely no words. But apparently, this is something that's come out from Benny Johnson and Disclosed TV, seemingly, at least to me, as a way to try and avoid any kind of accountability, avoid any kind of responsibility for what happened, despite as we know he's a multiple-time felon, right? The career criminal, the murder of Iryna Zarutska, now claims, this is from Disclosed TV, but they've quoted something from Benny Johnson, that the government implanted materials in his body that made him commit the heinous crime. So it wasn't him, it's whatever friggin' adamantium shit that was put inside his body, ladies and gentlemen, that's responsible. Obviously, he's not responsible for this. None of the people are responsible for this. They can't be responsible for the crimes, right? They are inherently oppressed by virtue of their skin color in today's society. It's the most racist society we've ever known, according to the critical race theory apparatchiks, right? So again, these people can never be held responsible for anything that they do, but as a result then that's given them this air of invincibility that they can go and do what they want, that claimed this young woman's life. Here is the audio from that, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to go and find this, it'll be linked down below as well.
So you said something in your body did what?
Nah, the material, put it like this, the material using my body to stab the lady.
And so she just got stabbed.
Yeah. You know that's not me. I'm talking about just for no reason. But since they did that, now they gotta investigate the material in my body exposed to. Since they want to do all that, now they gotta investigate.
It's funny because she's from the Ukraine. She's from Russia, and you know that.
Forgive me, ladies and gentlemen, but something tells me that there's a fair bit of bullshit coming from this story. And it tells you the media is probably going to run with the mental illness the mental illness narrative massively, obviously. There's inherent anti-white racism within pretty much all of the media, as I'll show you on screen in a moment, ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about the New York Times racial hierarchy, which has recently been exposed. But now the killer is claiming that it wasn't him. It was whatever this mysterious material that he obviously can't name or anything like that. He can't say anything about any government agency that put it into him. He doesn't say that he was ever, kidnapped and put under this trial or whatever, like something out of the Deadpool movies, right? Or something out of Squid Game, where he was taken off the street in his low point and was injected with this material that seemingly made him commit all of the previous crimes that he committed. Because either he committed all of the other previous crimes in a at least reasonable state of mind for whatever this person is, right? He wasn't insane or anything like that. It wasn't the materials, bruh, causing him to commit all these other crimes that he was convicted of. Again, 14-time felon. But because now he knows how this is going to completely change the discourse and change the dialogue around the situation, that no, there has to be obfuscation of responsibility. But the sad thing is, ladies and gentlemen, is the materials we can refer to are the materials often coming through the school system and often coming through government legislation when they're focused on restorative justice, when they're focused on DEI, when they're focused on all of these things that harken back to the Marxist oppressor-oppressed narrative and put it into this system where you put race in and you get critical race theory, whereby people that are of a certain skin color, again, culturally black, if you will, or black as this, it's obviously a racial characteristic, but more akin to something of class, right, in the bourgeoisie system. Black with a capital B, so to speak, we'll get onto in a moment. You're inherently oppressed, and it's the white people, cultural whiteness, if you will, that's associated with all of the good things in society and development, etc., that needs to be destroyed and uprooted as part of violent revolution, right? That's what sort of, in my opinion at least, bred the kind of mindset that's causing these people to do this, because they're being told that they're victims and they're being told that these are the people that are oppressing them. What are you going to do when you're told that? What are you going to do when you're told that multiple times a day through your school system, throughout your entire life, when it's drilled into you as if it's religious gospel, right? Not to mention all of the other cultural problems, from rap music and glorifying single motherhood and hoe culture and all the rest of it, right? But there are plenty of videos of this, ladies and gentlemen, and these are authors. These are perpetuated through authors. So we have here from 2023, this was shared by the Voice of Wales, Kamau Kambon, so author and owner of Blacknificent Books, and he was calling live on C-SPAN for the extermination of white people. And this was obviously not covered that much, seemingly, at the time. I never knew about this at the time. This was at the height of all of the BLM stuff and everything like that. Or, well, I suppose it was kind of fizzling out towards this point. But again, Biden still had a year and a half left in office at this point. So again, it was far from over. But this is very sadly, especially in America, and we've seen it in many instances here as well. I've covered it before, really. Again, it's not just even, white people, but a lot of people across the world have animus towards British people for things that happened in the past and stuff like that. I've covered that when there was an incident where I think somebody either got severely injured or died in a traffic collision, and it was reported in Wales Online, I believe it was. And there was a bunch of foreigners in the comments and laugh reacting to it. We covered that on a podcast a good few episodes ago, because that was a good few months ago. But this is sadly the way that they think. So let me throw you over to this now. This is an endemic problem, and it's been drilled into them, and it's been, largely some instances to no fault of their own, but because they understand that they can get something from it in terms of cultural capital, and in terms of the same way that the communists thought that they could get stuff out of their revolution, right? That they could attain some kind of power, been more than keen to drink or eat from that forbidden fruit, should we say.
And the one idea is how we are going to exterminate white people, because that, in my estimation, is the only conclusion I have come to. We have to exterminate white people off of the face of the planet to solve this problem. Now, I don't care whether you clap or not, but I'm saying to you that we need to solve this problem because they are going to kill us.
No, in many instances, seems to be a lot of you killing us. That's what it seems to be. And the stats, whenever you look at the stats, they back that up. The media likes to portray the one little bit of, white on black crime that we see. But when you look at black on black, when you look at black on white, when you look at all of these things, when you look at the fact that we talked about last time, the stats showing that in murder, in all of these things, rape, sexual assault, theft and robbery, that they're massively overrepresented for the percentage of the population that they make up. That's the same in the US, it's the same in the UK. The reality is the exact opposite, an inversion of what these people think. And that's unfortunate. That's obviously very, very unfortunate. I don't actually want that to be true, believe it or not. And again, that's just the reality. A lot of the things we're saying now are literally just because that is the reality. These people are massively overrepresented in the stats, and that is in many instances through no fault of anyone else but themselves. But pretty much in all instances. So you've seen, especially in the UK, that for various reasons of race and ethnicity and religion, etc., that people will be led off for even the most heinous crimes. Right, people will be let off for even the most heinous crimes, and others will go to prison for a long time. I think Banksy's next on the chopping block for naughty posts on X and stuff like that. So again, it's the exact opposite of what these people think. But sadly, this is a thought process. It is not unique to this one gentleman. Think of how many people would have bought his book, for example. How many people has been into his bookstore, let's say, and he would have espoused this ideology too. And again, a lot of people, seeing this person in a position of authority. You see an author, you instantly think they're an authority, right? And how many people would have uptaken his philosophy as if it was gospel, or even just unknowingly interpreted it, and he sent them down this rabbit hole of racial vengefulness or racial vengeance, right? Perceived vengeance, when there really is no problem, when there really is no epidemic of white on black crime. In many instances, it is the exact opposite. Because again, you've told these people that they're victims, and you've told them that these people are the oppressors. So of course they're going to go out and do these things. Of course they're going to go out and do these things. It's why the media, the government, the school system, they're all complicit in these crimes. They're all complicit in these crimes. Should not surprise you, ladies and gentlemen. I think this is from the official Black Lives Matter account. I believe it is on Instagram. This video is from, again, in reference to the incident. And it is, again, no surprise. I'm saying we have a right to violence. The right to violence is as fundamental as the right to pee. And no surprise, ladies and gentlemen, these analogies don't make sense. These are not exactly the smartest people in the world. That's coming from somebody that's not exactly a genius himself, right? The official Black Lives Matter account has posted a video stating that black people have a right to violence, quote unquote, amid outrage over the slaying of Iryna Zarutska at the hands of a black male in Charlotte, North Carolina. Here's that video for you, ladies and gentlemen.
Right to violence. All oppressed people have a right to violence. And I'm going to tell you something. It's like the right to pee. You got to have the right place. You got to have the right time. You got to have the appropriate situation. And I'm absolutely convinced that this is it. A right.
Apparently the right to violence and the right situation for that right to violence that is just as fundamental as the right to pee, whatever the hell that means, is when a young innocent woman who's fled a war zone, she's only 23 years old, is just sitting on her phone minding her own business, thinking that she's safe, in many instances supporting the exact same movement, as we covered a photo of her in her bedroom, I believe it was, where she had a Black Lives Matter poster and the I can't breathe in the bottom right-hand corner of it. She supported these people who are now supporting the person that killed her for racially motivated reasons. This is why, ladies and gentlemen, when you support these causes, why leftism is such a massive, you're holding the shotgun to your own face permanently, pretty much. And again, the people who are going to pull the trigger have all the reason to do so. You're literally, again, pointing the gun at your own face and telling them to shoot. And they'll gladly shoot. Or in this case, stab. I struggle for analogies sometimes. But again, it's like the classic, or Ouroboros, or feeding the, monster. You're trying to feed this monster because you believe it's, no, I can change it. I can do whatever, right? I want to appear virtuous. And then it comes and quite literally stabs you. Comes and quite literally stabs you in the back, or in this case, the upper chest and the neck. And you can't help but feel sorry for these people. You can't feel sorry for these people because the infection has been drilled in and implanted so deep. This is what we had through generations of this have happened through the public school system, which sadly many people have to rely on. Politicization of unions in this leftist mindset, right? And ever since World War II, the opposite, every single element of what the Nazis did, even down to the whole national pride and being for your own people and those things, we have to have the exact opposite of that. Because the Nazis were bad and they claimed to be nationalists and stuff like that, we can't have any nationalist sentiment. We need to destroy ourselves as a people, and we need to destroy our cultures, and we bring in a bunch of all other people to do so. And we need to, again, tie the noose around our necks and water the plants that are going to sprout into a tree and kill us. No, we shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't be doing that. It's as simple as that. And it doesn't end here, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't end here. So this is another thing that somebody posted on X recently. It's apparently a cult leader. So again, you have cults of this now as well. Again, people seeking to profit of this in some way, whether they have massive ego, whether they're pride, whether they want to gain money. Obviously, you know, again, a lot of these people will be like, oh, you got to give donations to the cult so we can grow and stuff like that and whatever else. Apparently, this racist cult leader in this video has been inciting his followers to kill all white people, including newborn babies. Apparently, he says, quote, I believe in the death and destruction of white people, each and every one of them. I don't give a damn if the little bastard come out of his mother's womb 3 seconds ago. Here is that video for you, ladies and gentlemen.
The baby. Huh? To hell with what National Geographic putting out. I'm telling you to your face here tonight. We gonna have to kill some little Penelope and some little Robbie. You wanna be free, don't you? Yeah. Y'all bullshit. You ain't got that sound like.
Why we gotta kill him?
Kill them all. You don't wanna be free sounding like that. Right. Do you wanna be free? Yeah. Do you wanna be free?
Yes, sir.
Do you wanna be free? Yeah. That's why I got.
There can be no coexistence with these people. It's as simple as that. People that think in this way, no matter who really they are, there can be no coexistence with these people. When they're saying, we got to kill a bunch of little Penelopes and little Robbies, I'm sorry, no. There's no coexistence with these people. There is absolutely no coexistence with these people. And there can't be, because literally, their whole religion is based around exterminating us. And sadly, this is, much like in many instances, again, not, grouping in everybody with this, but there's now many instances, like the Pakistani grooming gangs were a community-wide problem, because even then, you might not have had people within that community that directly raped children. You did indeed have people in that community that covered up for said rape, right? That treated the victims like shit because of their race, ethnicity, and their infidelity to the religion, right? You have people operating on very sectarian grounds where they would rather, again, keep their community safe despite the heinous crimes that they've committed, and keep individuals that done the heinous crimes in it safe by lying for them, by covering up for them, etc., than by operating in the common good of the community and holding these people to account the same way that we would hold our own to account. And this is sadly, again, similar thing. It's a community issue. And that's just the reality. Unfortunately, that's just the reality. The judicial system obviously doesn't help. The judicial system obviously doesn't help. The woke judiciary, whereby you have violent criminals and whoever else that are released, right, early release, and there's no deterrence for their crime, so instantly they go and do it again. You saw earlier with the times that we've reported it before, with Labour's early release scheme and stuff like that, how many of them went on to recommit crimes within 24 hours or within the first couple of days after being released. They were readmitted to prison because they were out committing crimes again. Leniency is not working. Leniency is obviously not working, but that is what our quote-unquote justice systems are based on. So a Colorado sheriff in this instance admits he was forced to release a quote-unquote very dangerous inmate from jail because of state law that requires criminals found incompetent to stand trial to be released. I'm sorry, no. If that's the case, we need to get rid of this whole incompetent to stand trial stuff because it's just resulting in people being put in danger. It's resulting in all of our communities being put in danger. And I'm sorry, if they're not even competent enough to stand trial, what makes you think they're competent enough to be out in our communities? If they're not even competent enough to stand trial, surely they're not competent enough to be out in their communities. Said he is a very dangerous person, and his actions, from what we can tell, were unprovoked. This is Weld County Sheriff Steve Reams warned the public about a potentially dangerous inmate he had to release on Monday. So here you go, ladies and gentlemen. Here's examples again of the judicial systems, quote-unquote judicial systems, bending over backwards for people that will never respect it, that will go recommit crimes and pose danger to the communities, all in the names of restorative justice and equity and all of these things.
It's a very violent crime, and how rapidly this person has accumulated contacts with law enforcement, it's concerning.
Weld County Sheriff Steve Reams is warning his residents of a man he released from jail, not by his own choosing, but because the suspect was ruled incompetent to stand trial.
With that ruling, we're forced to release that individual.
That individual is Debisa Ephraim, a 21-year-old who Reams says is seen in these videos fighting northern Coloradans. The videos, too graphic to be shown in full, show men being knocked unconscious and then continuously punched in the face while lying on the ground.
He's a very dangerous person, and his actions, from what we can tell, were unprovoked.
So why did he walk free without ever seeing a jury? Reams says it's the result of House Bill 1034, signed into law last year by Governor Jared Polis. The law, at its core, said those found incompetent to stand trial should be sent to mental health care instead of incarceration. But that is contingent on the suspect qualifying for that care, which Ephraim did not, Reams says. So Monday morning, he walked free from charges like attempted murder and the cell that he lived in for the last 5 months.
This or the case that happened in
Said there he walked away from charges of attempted murder, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we're talking about here, the quote-unquote justice system. Obviously, this is America, but we're seeing very similar things in the UK with the early release schemes and stuff like that. You've got people that are involved in grooming gangs that have never seen a day in prison or been released early. You've got violent criminals coming out onto the streets having only served about like 20% of their time or 40% of their time. What deterrent is there for these people not to go and do it again? We already told them that they're inherently victimized by whatever reason, by virtue of their religion or by virtue of their race and all of these things. And it's these people that are oppressing them. Told them all of these things. So what is the deterrent to stop them from going out and do it again when they know that if they even get convicted, they're not probably even going to go back for as long as they were before anyway? They're going to be going back for the same time, probably even shorter, because obviously they would have locked more people up for social media posts by that point. So there's going to be more prison overcrowding. So they're going to say, oh, we're not going to release the thought criminals because they've committed crimes against humanity with the X posts, right? So they're going to say, oh no, we got to release these other people early. And it's restorative justice and it's equity, right? Because they're systemically underprivileged and oppressed against by the violent white oppressors. No, this narrative is done. This narrative is absolutely done. That's why obviously they tried to memory hold this murder so much. That's why none of the mainstream leftist, associated propaganda and all the rest of them wanted to talk about it. Because it's blown the narrative wide open. It's completely changed the discourse and there's no going back now. There's absolutely no going back. And speaking of these propaganda organizations, ladies and gentlemen, this is something that's very, very stark. And this is where you realize, if you look like me, there's a target on your back, whether you realize it or not, and whether you want it or not, and whether you even want to play the culture war game or not. Okay? You have enemies in this world, even if you don't think that you do. Because people, by virtue of whatever your history, right, your ancestry, your ethnicity, where you live, right, because they perceive themselves as being victims and you were the oppressor, people have made you their enemy, right? Even if you have no reason to make any of them your enemy, okay? You have a target on your back, whether you realize it or not. It's been peddled by organizations like, particularly in America, in this instance, the New York Times. So in this instance, the New York Times has implemented a racial hierarchy to its reporting where any time the word black comes up and it refers to a person, right, or a community, they will capitalize the B in black, but they will never do it for any white person or talking about a white community. There's a perfect example here where somebody has screenshotted this extract from the New York Times, ladies and gentlemen. It is perfectly clear to see. And in many instances, another poster I forgot to bookmark made an example of the reasons why, all to do with culture and systemic injustice, etc. All of these basic reasons, or all of the the boilerplate reasons that we're always given for blatant racial discrimination. And look at this, ladies and gentlemen. So you're seeing it on screen now, and I'll read it for you. I'll read the first paragraph for you. After the video's release, a number of influential conservatives also accused major news outlets, including the New York Times, of ignoring the story because the crime was committed by a black man against a white woman. Now, again, it says there at the end, ladies and gentlemen, black man, white woman. If you look on screen, you'll see that the B in black is capitalized, the W in white is not. The reason for the media silence is racial, Dinesh D'Souza, the right-wing commentator, wrote in an online post on Sunday. If the killer were white, again, the W is not capitalized, this would get coverage. Of course it was. We saw that last time with how much the media is biased towards white killers versus black killers. In instances, the black killers, not only will their race not be mentioned most of the time, right, in the news outlets that do report it, only about 30% of them actually do report it, whereas it's over 90% for white killers. So it's, again, threefold difference. Of course, if it were a white assailant murdering a black victim, and black is indeed capitalized, then it would be front page headlines everywhere. And he's completely right. He's absolutely completely right. So make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, whether you realize it or not, you might think we live in this perfectly egalitarian, equal society. We absolutely don't. Because a lot of the people that are in the media in the UK as well, whether it's in Wales, whether it's Scotland, England, wherever, they operate on much the same thought patterns. They might not be as overt in this way, right? Thinking that they can get away with it, because the sentiment, right? All of the sentiment with regards to Islam, immigration, etc., has been building for nearly 100 years. Been building for about 80 years now. So you can even go back to 1945 and see that there was very little or no sentiment expressed for wanting immigration. It has been forced on generations of us, and we've just been basically forced again to accept it. And that's, again, not even necessarily, my view, but you only got to look at accounts of veterans from World War II, where a lot of them are expressing, this is not the country that I fought for. In many instances now, with how the culture's changed and how the country's changed, and how the demographics have changed, I think I fought for the wrong side. That is just the reality of how a lot of people thought at that time, how a lot of World War II veterans thought. Again, a lot of them expressing very little positive sentiment about the government, about how things have changed, before, obviously, they end up dying of old age. There's numerous accounts you can go and listen to. In fact, I'll list a video down below. Even. But this is the thing. You have a target on your back, ladies and gentlemen, because of your race, whether you realize it or not, and whether you want it or not, whether you want to be involved or not. You're involved in this. You're involved in this by virtue of you being a citizen of this planet, by forces wanting control over you that, again, you might not even realize, right? And by virtue of you having a say and a vote. Right? You are involved whether you like it or not, and as a result, you have a responsibility to take notice when these things happen. You at least have a responsibility to take notice of things that are being said about how the culture's changing. You at least have a duty not to be apathetic about these things. Even if we have disagreements, even if we have arguments, debates, etc. It's a duty for people to be active, because this is what people campaign for. Supposedly, feminism being this, uproot grassroots movement, right? That, again, it's all a complete lie. It's all a complete lie. It was bankrolled by some of the most powerful individuals on the planet. It's been one of the greatest psyops in recent memory. But again, supposedly the people of the past fought so hard to get you the right to vote. Now so many people don't care, or they don't even look at the party that they're voting for. They just vote purely for, I don't know, who their parents voted for, or just for the party that the community has always voted for, without giving a shit about the policies. People are so apathetic, they don't even look at these things. Or their thought process becomes so warped, they actually vote for their own destruction. Again, it makes a really good case against universal suffrage in many ways. And I'm speaking there as somebody that would probably qualify for losing the right to vote. But anyway, I understand that universal suffrage has been an absolutely disastrous thing in many ways, or at the very least, you can make that case. And one thing to take into account, ladies and gentlemen, is how big, the bankroll is for people that are actively, this is again another American example, but you want to think about things whenever Plaid, for example, Plaid Cymru, talk about making Wales a nation of sanctuary, all of these things, and the woke judiciary, etc. Think of that when I read you this next bit, with how the how do you say this? Mecklenburg, I believe it's called, Mecklenburg County was awarded its second grant in the amount of $1 million from the MacArthur Foundation as part of the Safety and Justice Challenge to continue supporting the county's efforts to develop and implement strategies capable of positively impacting the main drivers of the local jail population. So, people are investing, these NGOs are investing in our counties, in this instance in America, in this instance to the tune of $3.3 million to actively keep people out of jail, quote unquote, safely reducing the prison population or the jail population, which is in this document on screen, ladies and gentlemen. So again, in 2022, the county was awarded an additional $350,000 to ensure the recent reforms were sustainable. This brings the total investment in Mecklenburg County by the MacArthur Foundation to $3.3 million to continue safely reducing the jail population. The county plans to implement strategies aimed at addressing system inefficiencies, enhancing existing services, providing non-jail alternatives for defendants, increasing community engagement in local justice and system reform. So there you go. A lot of powerful individuals. You think of George Soros Open Society Foundation, etc., etc. They want criminals on your streets. They want people to be unsafe. And that is just the very sad reality of it. That's a very sad reality of it. That's why they've flooded our communities with people that we never asked for, right? That's why they've made them deliberately low trust societies and unsafe, right? It's all by design. It's all by design as well, because they wanted to give these people the right to vote so that you weren't going to be able to democratically get out of the predicament which you have been forced into. So we perilous little time to do anything about this, ladies and gentlemen. But again, it's important to know where these sources are coming from. We all need to be united in the defense of our people and our nation, ultimately. Because, again, the biggest thing is, ladies and gentlemen, nobody's going to be there for us. All of the people I said before that were putting those flags up on the bridge in Pontefract, I get it. You don't have to. I don't say this with any hate towards any other person on planet from wherever they're from, right? And all of these countries, don't have any hatred towards them as people or them as countries, right? Certain ones I do despise, because of culture and religion and anything like that, right? And the cultural practices they do. I hate, countries like, the practices that go on in like Iraq and Afghanistan and Iran and places like that. I absolutely despise the governments of those places. The people don't necessarily despise. More often than not, they're quite good people, right? But again, biggest thing is none of those people from those nations are going to give a shit if Wales goes to shit, for the most part. For the vast most part, because it's not their home. They don't have the same investment. It's our home. It's our home. We stand to lose the most if we lose it, and we don't have anywhere else to go. That's just the reality. If you enjoyed that clip, then make sure to go on over to the Voice of the Valleys X page at VOT_Valleys on X. We're also on Instagram at Voice of the Valleys. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, comment, all of that good stuff. Thank you so much, and we'll see you again soon. Godspeed.